Hello everyone, it's Brother Randy with SourMilkMinistries. Welcome to video 24, Taking on the Trinity, round 1. Now, let me begin by stating unequivocally that even though I deny the doctrine of the Trinity, that does not mean that I deny the divinity of Christ. I say that because that's the typical knee-jerk reaction that people have whenever they hear anyone challenge the doctrine of the Trinity. Well, you're denying the divinity of Christ. You're an antichrist. You're a heretic. My pastor warned me to stay away from people like you. You know, I bet he did, because it's my understanding that a lot of pastors are taught in seminary, aka cemetery, because that's the place truth goes to be buried under the doctrines and commandments of men. They're taught not to even entertain anyone who would dare challenge the doctrine of the Trinity. These people are evil. They're heretics. Don't talk to them. So is it any wonder people are hostile to anyone who would challenge the doctrine of the Trinity? A doctrine that most people don't even understand. So let's get that out of the way right now in round 1. What do I mean by the doctrine of the Trinity? Well, there's 2 basic parts being taught in Christendom. Most Christians are familiar with the first part, but they don't really have a handle on the second part. So what's the first part? Well, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are 3 co-equal and co-eternal persons. And together, these 3 persons make up God. In fact, I've heard pastors refer to God as an it, as a what, as a thing. Whereas most people, when they hear, God will strike you dead, they don't think of this corporate, 3-person co-equal and co-eternal Godhead. They think of, anything but that. But that's what Christianity means by God. So when you hear the word God, just think of a pie with 3 pieces. 3 co-equal and co-eternal pieces. So that's part 1. Now, part 2 gets a little scary because it requires you to leave your brain at the door. Now, so what's part 2? Well, it seems that even though these 3 persons are co-equal and co-eternal, and one is not greater than the other, the Son was begotten from the Father, meaning that the Son came from the Father. But even though the Son came from the Father, there was never a time that the Son and Father were apart. They always existed together. Say what? You're saying that this came from that, but there was never a time that this and that were apart. I'm sorry, that doesn't make any sense. That defies logic. How could this come from that, but then in the next breath you tell me that there was never a time that this and that were apart? They were always together as this and that. Do you see the problem there? It defies logic. Now, when you ask about that, here is the answer you will receive. It is a mystery. It's a mystery. Don't try to solve it. Your brain is finite. How dare you try to solve this mystery? You can't understand God. You can't understand the Godhead. Don't even try to do it. The only mystery to me is why you would believe something like that. But yet, assuming you even understand the part 2, that's what you accept. Oh, it's a mystery. Don't try to figure it out. My pastor told me not to try to figure it out. In fact, once upon a time, they used to kill people if you gave the wrong answer to this question. Was there a time where the Son of God did not exist? You better be careful how you answer that question, because if you say yes, it could get you burned at the stake. So, what would be my answer to that question? Was there ever a time that the Son of God did not exist? My answer would be, of course. Now I'm a heretic. Now I'm getting burned at the stake for stating what I see as the obvious. Now, you're like, well, how can you say that? Well, let me leave you with this question. If I make a snowball out of a pile of eternal snow, did the snowball always exist? The answer is no, it hasn't. Okay? Now, as much as I want to continue on, that's all I want to cover in round 1. In round 2, I'm going to come back and I'm going to break some eggs. What do I mean by that? Well, if you've been around Christendom long enough, you know that the analogy that the pastors love to give the masses is that God is like an egg, right? God is like an egg. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the analogy. Some of you may not be. Come back to round 2. I'm going to break that egg, and I'm going to give you a much better analogy that most people have never considered. So hopefully you'll come back for round 2.